Today, in this video, I'll dive into what Federal Reserve Chairman said that made Trump warn about his termination, why UnitedHealth stock crashed 22% today, and why the Dow Jones dropped 500 points while the S&P 500 and Nasdaq stayed flat. Plus, I'll share my portfolio updates for yesterday, which is day 42, and for today, day 43. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, $1 Million SIP. Today is day 43 of my journey to $1 million using hybrid SIP strategy on TQQQ. Since I couldn't update yesterday, let me quickly go over day 42. I checked the one-day time frame to see the opening price and closing price of the previous day's candle, and TQQ is still in a downtrend. So I stuck to my $200 to $250 daily investment limit. Then I switched to the 5-minute time frame. TQQ opened below the 12 EMA, so I only had to wait for the bounce back to happen, which happened around 10:20. And I bought 5 units at 47.875, investing $239. And after this purchase, my average price per unit dropped to $60.36. Now on to today. Day 43, I kept my daily investment limit at $200 to $250 because it is very obvious that we're in downtrend, so there was no need to check. And then I switched to the 5-minute time frame. TQQ opened above the 12 EMA, and you guys know my drill by now, right? I wait for a dip below the 12 EMA and then a bounce back above it. So the dip happened around 9:15. And the bounce back around 10. So that triggered my entry, and I bought 5 units at 45.335, investing $227. At the end of today's market session, TQQ closed at 45.16, down just 0.29% from where it opened. Pretty much flat, which isn't too surprising given the mixed market action today. I'll share my updated portfolio stats at the end of the video, but first, let's talk about what's been moving the markets. So what did Fed Chairman Jerome Powell said that spooked a lot of investors? So on April 16th, which is yesterday, Powell said the US economy isn't growing as fast as last year. People aren't spending much, and companies are rushing to import stuff to avoid new tariffs, which is messing with GDP. The recent example is Apple. It is reported that Apple imported some million iPhones from India and China in order to avoid these new tariffs. So he's saying this is messing with GDP. And he basically said things are looking kind of weak. So this got investors worried that economy might be heading for trouble. And he also talked about Trump's new 245% tariffs on Chinese stuff. He said these tariffs will probably make stuff more expensive for a while and maybe even longer. He said this could lead to stagflation. So what is stagflation? This is a combo of inflation plus the slowing down of economy. So this is a scary combo, and that is bad news for everyone, and markets hate that. He also mentioned how they're going to keep interest rate unchanged at 4.25 to 4.5%, and investors were actually hoping that he would lower it to make borrowing cheaper and boost the economy. But he said very clearly that they're not going to do that, and they're just going to wait for now and see later in the future. So for this, investors were bummed because they wanted relief from the tariff mess. And he also admitted that Fed has 2 big goals, which is keeping prices stable and making sure people have jobs. But with tariffs pushing prices up, they might have to choose either fight inflation or protect jobs. So he called it a challenging scenario, and markets don't like uncertainty. And someone asked if the Fed would step in if the stock market crashed hard. He said no. So usually investors think that Fed will save the day if markets tank, but him saying no made everyone nervous. So bottom line, his meeting or interview made investors worry about a weaker economy, higher prices, and no help from the Fed. And that's why markets dropped yesterday. S&P 500 fell 2%, Nasdaq 100 by 3%, and Dow Jones by 700 points. So this interview happened yesterday, and Trump actually responded to it today on his Truth Social post. So he basically strongly criticized Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell on Truth Social, accusing him of damaging the economy by keeping interest rates high. And he also argued that Powell was undermining efforts to protect American jobs through tariffs and claimed that the Fed chair was failing to support US economic interests. So later in the day, while speaking to reporters, Trump expressed dissatisfaction with Powell's performance, suggesting that if he decided to remove him, it could happen quickly. He also alluded to the possibility of Powell's dismissal, implying that such a move might happen sooner rather than later. So why the bad blood? Trump and Powell have been clashing for years. Back in Trump's first term, he picked Powell as a Fed chairman in 2018, but then got mad when he raised rates to keep inflation in check. Trump has always wanted the Fed to keep rates low to make the economy look good, but Powell's job is to balance inflation and jobs, not to make Trump happy. So this fight's been simmering and now it's boiling over. So Trump's threat to fire Powell is actually a big deal. The Fed's independence is super important. It's supposed to make decisions based on data, not politics. So if Trump tries to boot Powell, it could freak out global markets even more. And some experts say messing with the Fed could make inflation worse and lead to a stagflationary mess. Higher prices and a weaker economy at the same time. Plus, Powell's term doesn't end until May 2026, and he said he's not going anywhere unless the law says so. So comment below what you think of this whole thing. Should Fed cut the interest rates? And if Trump threatening Powell's termination is right. Now on to the next news. Why did UnitedHealth stock fall today? Today, UnitedHealth's stock price dropped by a massive 22% today, closing at $454. That is a big deal. It means if you owned $100 worth of UNH stock yesterday, it's now worth only about $78. Here's what happened. So every few months, companies like UnitedHealth tell investors how much money they made. This is called an earnings report. And analysts, that is the people who study companies, predict how much they think the company will earn per share, which is called EPS. This is the profit divided by the number of shares people own. This time, UnitedHealth reported an EPS of 7.20, but analysts expected 7.29. Yes, that is a small amount, but missing by even a small amount like this can scare investors because it shows the company isn't doing as well as expected. UnitedHealth also said they don't think they will make as much money in 2025 as they originally thought. They cut their full year profit prediction from 29.50 to 30 per share to 26 to 26.50 per share. Analysts were expecting 29.73, so this was a big letdown. So when a company says we won't make as much money as we thought, investors often sell the stock because they worry about the future. And UnitedHealth makes money by charging people for insurance by way of premiums and paying for their medical care. So they got surprised by how much medical care people needed, especially in their Medicare Advantage plans, which are for older adults. More doctor visits and procedures meant they had to pay out more money than they planned. They said their medical cost ratio, the percentage of premiums they spend on medical care, will jump to 86 to 87% in 2025, up from 82% in 2023. A higher MCR means less profit, and that is bad news for investors. UnitedHealth has a part of their company called Optum, which includes things like managing prescription drug plans. They said some unexpected changes in who is using their services, called membership profiles, messed up how much money they will get paid in 2025. Basically, they're getting less money from the government for some patients than they expected, which cuts into their profits. And when a big company like UnitedHealth has bad news, it often scares investors about other similar companies. So stocks of other health insurers like CVS Health, Humana, and Cigna also dropped today, some by 3 to 13%. Investors started worrying that rising medical costs might be a problem for the whole industry, not just UnitedHealth. So how bad was the fall? UnitedHealth stock closed at 585 yesterday. Today, it fell to 454 by the end of the day, a 22% drop. During the day, it hit a low of 447, and even in pre-market trading, it was down 20% at one point. UnitedHealth's market cap dropped to $435.67 billion today, meaning it lost about $130 billion in value compared to yesterday's close. So market cap is the total value of all the company's shares. So this drop is a huge hit. And some call this is the worst single day drop for UNH since March 2020 when the pandemic caused a lot of market chaos. Investors don't like surprises, especially bad ones. UnitedHealth has a history of being pretty good at predicting their profits, so this unusual and unacceptable miss made people lose confidence. Plus, the company's been dealing with other problems lately, like a cyber attack in 2024 that cost them $705 million and a Department of Justice probe into their Medicare billing practices since Feb 2025. These issues make investors nervous that more trouble might be coming. So Dow Jones went down by 500 points because UnitedHealth's bad news today just added fuel to the fire, especially since their stock is a big part of the Dow Jones Industrial Average, a group of 30 major companies that shows how the market is doing. That's it for today's stock market updates. Now on to my portfolio update. So far, I've invested $94.62 with 158 units in my holdings, and today TQQ closed at 45.16, which means market value of my holdings is 71.35 and my average price per unit is 59.8. So I'm sitting on a net loss of 23.27, translating to a 24.5% decline. And since I started, TQQQ fell 50%, but my portfolio only 24.5%, which means I have outperformed by 25.5%. That's all for today. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe to follow my journey and to get all updates related to stock market. Thank you. See you in the next video.